It was the night of 14 Jan 2012 when a cruise ship twice the size of the Titanic, the Costa Concordia, met with a tragedy that shocked the world. Built at a staggering cost of $570 million, this floating palace tilted at an almost 80-degree angle off the coast of Italy and lay half submerged. What baffled experts was not just the accident, but what followed. Ships in such situations usually either sink completely as water floods the compartments or eventually right themselves with the waves. But the Costa Concordia didn't do either. It stayed frozen in that tilted position for 19 long months. Why? Because bringing her back was no ordinary task. Salvaging a 290-meter-long, 60,000-ton luxury liner became the largest, most complex, and most expensive marine salvage operation in history, finally completed in July 2014 at a cost of $1.2 billion. And the technology used to rescue this giant had never been tried before. The night of the disaster. Cruise ships are essentially floating resorts, designed not to take you somewhere, but to let you enjoy the journey itself. On 13th Jan 2012, the magnificent Costa Concordia set sail from Civitavecchia port, Italy, on a 7-day Mediterranean holiday. On board were Captain Francesco Schettino, 1,023 crew members, and 3,229 passengers. The plan: visit 5 ports and return to Civitavecchia. No one knew that just hours later they would face the most terrifying night of their lives. The ship's course was meant to pass between the Italian mainland and Isola del Giglio, an island off Tuscany. Moments before reaching that point, Costa Cruises' managers suggested performing a sail-by salute. This tradition involves steering close to shore so passengers can admire the lights on land and those on land can witness the grand ship passing near. To impress, Captain Schettino altered the route, bringing the ship dangerously close, just 1 or 2 nautical miles from the island. It was night. The collision. At 9:45 p.m., the unthinkable happened. The Costa Concordia struck the hidden underwater rocks of Scola Piccola, tearing a 53-meter, 173-foot gash in the port side. Seawater poured in rapidly, and within minutes, the entire electrical network failed. Total blackout. At 9:51 p.m., passengers heard an announcement. A small technical problem, soon resolved. But many sensed something seriously wrong and began calling the Italian Coast Guard. At 10:22 p.m., port authorities radioed the ship, asking if there was an issue. The officers downplayed it again. Just a blackout, technicians at work. By 10:26 p.m., the situation had worsened. Finally, Schettino admitted there was underwater damage and requested a tugboat, but still failed to mention the collision with the rocks, his grievous mistake. Water continued to flood the compartments. The pumps failed. The ship began to list sharply. Only at 10:58 p.m., over an hour after the impact, did Captain Schettino finally give the order to abandon ship. The Coast Guard launched an emergency response: 25 patrol boats, 14 merchant vessels, and multiple helicopters. Chaos and heroism. While thousands scrambled in panic, Captain Schettino left his ship, boarding a lifeboat to shore before many passengers had escaped. Over 4,219 people were eventually rescued, but it took over 5 hours in worsening conditions as the ship leaned further and further over. 31 people lost their lives. One body, Indian waiter Russell Ribello, was not found until 3rd November 2014. The unprecedented salvage. Once the rescue ended, a new challenge loomed. How to recover a half-sunken 60,000-ton cruise liner lying on its side at an 80-degree angle, perched precariously on underwater rocks, threatening to slide into deeper waters at any moment. Enter Nick Sloan, an internationally renowned salvage expert. Even for him, this was the first of its kind challenge to raise such a massive ship in one piece. Step 1. Securing the wreck. 16 gigantic steel cables were passed under the ship by divers and anchored deep into the rock to stop it from slipping. But a new danger emerged. The ship's middle section was hanging like a bridge with no support, risking a catastrophic break. Step 2. Supporting the hull. Engineers filled the empty space between the ship and rocks with 16,000 to 18,000 tons of concrete bags, creating a safe bed. Step 3. Building a platform. They drilled deep 8-foot wide holes into the seabed and drove in 26 massive steel piles. On these piles, they constructed a giant underwater steel platform capable of holding the ship's enormous weight. Still, there were gaps beneath the platform, so another 13,000 tons of concrete was poured to level it. The final lift, a feat of engineering. By June 2013, the team faced the biggest challenge, attaching huge buoyancy tanks called sponsons, each as big as a 10-storied building and weighing around 500 tons. Using the crane ship Fenice, workers carefully positioned these colossal sponsons on the ship's side. Additional bracing tanks were fitted under the bow to prevent it from cracking during the lift. Finally came the key technology, strand jacks, hydraulic pulling machines welded to the platform. These powerful winches slowly pulled the wreck upright, centimeter by centimeter. After months of planning and days of painstaking work, the impossible happened. The Costa Concordia rose upright, its weight now fully resting on the engineered platform. More sponsons were attached to the opposite side, and once drained of water, they made the ship buoyant again, allowing it to float once more.